Killed in the crossfire, the teenage law student shot dead in a botched plan between rival businesses. Aya Hashem's family say they hope the 7 men sentenced to life for her murder will rot in prison.
In my pain, I wouldn't wish it on my worst enemy or my family's pain. We're gonna live the rest of our lives without our angel.
Also tonight, the unvaccinated critical with COVID on why they didn't get the jab.
Why didn't you get vaccinated?
Because it's still something that I was, investigating, considering.
Ministers say holidays are back on for August, but the latest changes to travel rules could leave some high and dry. And why this couple are recreating the Tokyo Olympics in Oxford with mixed success.
This is the ITV Evening News with Lucrezia Millarini.
Good evening. All Aya Hashem did was go out to buy groceries for her family, a short walk to the shops from which she never returned. Instead, the innocent 19-year-old student who dreamed of becoming a lawyer helping oppressed people was mistakenly shot dead in a bungled drive-by shooting. Life sentences with long minimum terms were today handed down to 7 men involved in a plot to kill a business rival that resulted in Aya's murder. Her family, who fled the violence in Lebanon, said their daughter was a shining star in their lives. Hannah Miller reports.
Aya Hashem was on her way to the shops, unaware that she was about to become the innocent victim of a carefully worked out and murderous plot. After one gunshot missed its intended target, the second attempt killed Aya almost immediately.
Yeah, I saw the car, saw the gun, and they started shooting on me. She was just walking around.
Is she breathing?
No, she's not responsive. She's got a very weak pulse. We're just starting CPR.
Today, Aya's family said the murder had changed their lives forever.
In my pain, I wouldn't wish it on my worst enemy or my family's pain. We're gonna live the rest of our lives without our angel.
Today, 7 men were each sentenced to at least 27 years in prison for both Aya's murder and the attempted murder of their intended victim. Orchestrator Feroz Suleiman and gunman Zamir Raja will each serve at least 34 years behind bars.
The shooting in broad daylight was the culmination of a feud between these 2 garages. The owner of RI Tyres, Feroz Suleiman, unhappy with the competition from Quick Tyres next door. So unhappy that he hatched what was called an elaborate plan to dispose of his rival.
As a specially purchased car drove by with gun at the ready, Suleiman adopted a ringside seat on his forecourt to watch his efforts play out.
Stay where you are, yeah? Keep your hands out, all right? I've got a taser, OK?
The gunman, who'd agreed a fee of £1,500 for the killing, was arrested at London Euston Station.
I'm delighted with the sentencing. There's been months of meticulous and challenging police work, but I think more importantly for me, today was for the family.
Today, Aya's relatives gathered at the scene where she died to remember their shining star, a family ripped apart by a petty business rivalry who will never see her smile again.
Aya's family clearly devastated by their loss, but they said outside the court here today that they can at least take some comfort from the fact that none of these men will ever hurt or kill again. Only one of the men sentenced today had a completely clean criminal record, but they were out on the streets and Aya was simply in the wrong place at the wrong time.
All right, Hannah and Preston, thank you. Despite recent encouraging trends about COVID, ITV News has evidence that many unvaccinated young people are still falling ill. According to figures from NHS England, a rising proportion of patients being admitted to hospitals with COVID are aged between 18 and 34. About 1,000 young adults are in a critical condition. Our health editor, Emily Morgan, reports from a London hospital which last year experienced the pandemic at its worst.
So familiar is this sight, it is hard not to be indifferent. but one look at the inside of an acute hospital ward with dozens of COVID patients tells you the virus and deaths from it has not gone away. And it's the unvaccinated young who are now suffering.
When you reach that stage where you don't feel like you're breathing properly, it's an issue. And it was worrying.
Thought you might die?
100%.
Alan wasn't vaccinated. He wanted to wait, weigh up his options, but he ended up here and 10 days later is still unwell.
Do you regret that now?
I'm not saying I regret, but like I said, with the whole vaccination stuff and all of that, like I said, I still have to kind of make sure everything is comfortable enough to say you're going to do this or you're going to do that or you're going to make that decision.
His consultant at Northwick Park Hospital in London says the unvaccinated has led to a rise in unnecessary admissions.
I would say about 70% of the patients that we're looking after have not had a COVID vaccine. People feel that they weren't susceptible, that they were not at risk of getting COVID. Others have said that they weren't aware that they were eligible for the vaccine. For patients that have not had a vaccine and then developed COVID, some of them do demonstrate regret.
NHS analysis shows patients aged 18 to 34 made up more than 20% of those admitted to hospital last month, up from 5.4% at the peak in January. About 1,000 young adults are currently in a critical condition, 4 times higher than the winter peak. It's not just the acute wards here that are struggling with this latest wave of patients. There's an endless stream arriving downstairs at A&E, many of whom also need a bed.
We're super busy at the moment. We've just hit our January type attendance numbers, and it's a huge mix of COVID and non-COVID, which makes it sort of triply complicated for us right now.
This hospital was overwhelmed during the first wave of the virus. It is nowhere near as busy with COVID patients now, but any more, and the knock-on effect could be worrying.
Well, Emily, clearly some hospitals are seeing a bit of pressure, aren't they? But some more positive news today, promising data from the NHS COVID app.
Yeah, it looks like pandemic is finally beginning to ease. The number of alerts sent to people who'd been in contact with a positive case fell by 43%. Just 395,000 pings were sent out between the 22nd of July and the 28th of July. That's down from nearly 700,000 the week before. I have to say, though, it's not really a surprise. There has been a really similar drop in the number of positive cases of COVID in the similar time frame. So that's also down by about 43%. So you'd also expect alerts to also go down. There have been reports of people deleting the app, so that might also be a minor factor. And obviously when it ceased to be a legal requirement to check into venues, that probably also played a part. But the main reason, cases are down and it's beginning to have an effect on the app.
OK, makes sense. Emily, thank you. Holiday destinations in Europe are seeing a surge in demand tonight after many of the traffic light travel restrictions were eased. One online agency told ITV News of a 55% increase in bookings to France and a similar increase, 42%, to Spain. But as our consumer editor Chris Choi reports, some travel firms say the situation is still too precarious.
The Costa del Sol today. There's relief new government rules won't make it any harder to come here this summer, but some tourists still feel uncertain about whether things could change.
We were really worried about things changing while we were out here, but like I said, we paid, so we really had to take our chances and try it. Hopefully it won't.
Quite frankly, there's so many messages going out, it's just creating a mass confusion.
Included in these travel changes, arrivals from France will no longer need to self-isolate if fully vaccinated, aligning France with the rest of the amber list. Spain keeps its amber status, but arrivals from the country and all its islands are now advised to use a pre-departure PCR test as a precaution against COVID variants. UK scientists will closely monitor the situation, and Germany is among 7 countries being added to the quarantine-free green list.
Mexico.
There are up to 6,000 Brits in Mexico. It will enter the red list, meaning compulsory hotel quarantine. And there are few guarantees other countries won't change status at short notice.
Will there be no further changes in the next 3 weeks? Is that a guarantee?
We're not expecting to make more changes through August. Of course, I can't make it a 100% guarantee, but we do want people to be able to go away, relax, enjoy the holidays, and we'll come back at the next review.
India is coming off the red list, meaning this family can now visit loved ones without hotel quarantine.
I'm very, very excited that these 2 years in this pandemic had made you realize that how important parents are in life.
Luton Airport today as the holiday getaway gathers pace. The new travel rules start on Sunday, with many in this industry saying government is still doing too little to boost the lift-off of summer travel. Chris Choi, ITV News.
Police today charged 2 adults and a 13-year-old boy over the death of 5-year-old Logan Mwangi. Logan was found with multiple injuries in the Ogmore River last week. The partner of his mother, John Cole, who is aged 39 and from Sarn in Bridgend, was charged with murder. His mother, Angharad Williamson, who is 30, and a 13-year-old boy who cannot be named, were jointly charged with perverting the course of justice. More than 10,000 people have now risked their lives this year crossing the Channel in small boats to get to the UK. Yesterday alone, 482 migrants arrived after making the perilous journey a new daily record. Chloe Keedy is in Dover this evening. Chloe, more pressure on the government over this then?
Well, yeah, that's right. And there's actually a Border Force cutter down there in the harbour behind us as we speak, unloading boat after boat of migrants who have managed to make it across the Channel today. Yesterday, in somewhat clearer conditions, it has to be said, at least 21 boats made it across. We've actually got some footage that was filmed by a fisherman yesterday morning. Now, he estimates that there were 45 people on that grey dinghy that you can see in the middle. He says that included several children and that none of them was wearing a life jacket. Now, the government's been criticised for failing to do enough to address this problem. The Home Secretary, Priti Patel, was in Athens earlier this week, meeting members of the Greek government to discuss the challenges they share when it comes to illegal migration. And last month, she announced that the government was giving France £54 million to do more patrols in the Channel. But look, for all the money, for all the manpower, what the figures show is that more and more migrants are risking their lives to make that crossing.
All right, Chloe in Dover, thank you. Still to come on the ITV Evening News. We're in Greece to witness the damage from the ferocious wildfires. And the Olympics-inspired couple for whom it really is the taking part that counts.
I think there's something special and really British about the idea of normal people doing difficult things badly.
Those stories and more after the break. Welcome back. ITV News can report firsthand tonight on the destruction caused by the wildfires across southern Europe. We've been to Greece, one of the countries worst hit. Soaring temperatures and bone-dry conditions have caused fires to rage out of control in Spain, Italy, Greece and Turkey. They've even threatened to engulf Olympia, the historic birthplace of the Olympic Games. While on the Greek island of Evia, firefighters are still battling to contain the flames, as our reporter Ben Chapman found out.
The ground is still smouldering on Evia. This was a children's playground until flames and panic rushed through here yesterday afternoon.
I saw it on TV that my school was on fire.
Eleni was forced to abandon her languages school here. This is what had confronted her village. Residents left with nowhere to run but the sea. She returned this afternoon to find that 2 decades of hard work had been devoured in just a few minutes.
For me, it was all I have, you know. I have all my students here. This is my property, this is my job. This was my property, my job, and I lost everything right now.
And still, Evia burns. Just one of many fronts being fought by Greek firefighters as the relentless heat continues to fuel the flames. A Greek minister has described this operation as a clash of the titans, but for firefighters it's also a tit-for-tat battle. When they put one fire out, another simply pops up elsewhere. Without support from the air, the difficult terrain would make containing this fire almost impossible. Every 10 minutes, Vasilis watches the aircraft fly over his farm, and the flames move ever closer.
It's our livelihood here, so it's threatened. You're sad about the people that you know, that they lost their houses, their fortunes, their work, and all around a general feeling of pessimism.
That pessimism is shared by the Greek Prime Minister, who's called this an unprecedented environmental crisis. With the outskirts of Athens, as well as this island, threatened with further destruction, he's warned there are still many difficult days ahead. Ben Chapman, ITV News, Evia, Greece.
The Bank of England issued a warning today that inflation could rise to its highest level for a decade. But there was more positive news about employment. Let's talk to our economics editor, Joel Hills. Joel, what did the bank say?
Well, look, the uplifting news here, furloughed will either return to their jobs or find some other form of employment when the scheme ends next month. But the strong bounce back in economic activity is generating strong inflation, and the bank thinks we're in for a period of a squeeze on living standards this year as next, as prices continue to...
Sure, it is only temporary.
What makes you think it will be temporary?
Well, we've looked at it very carefully, and we've looked at what's causing it. And we think that the underlying causes of it are ones that should go away.
Inflation's being driven higher by higher spending as the economy unlocks, by a surge in the price of oil and other commodities, by constrained supply and an abundance of vacancies, with companies saying that they are struggling to fill them. Now, the big thing here is that the bank is betting that all these are temporary pressures. They may not be. We may be in a situation where the economy has to slow down and the bank has to raise interest rates sooner than would otherwise be the case, which is currently expected early next year.
All right, Joel, thank you. The Sports Direct founder Mike Ashley is to stand down as the boss of his Frasers Group retail empire. Talks are underway for his daughter's fiancé, Michael Murray, to become chief executive next May. Mr Ashley, also owner of Newcastle United Football Club, will remain on the board of Frasers Group, the parent company of Sports Direct, House of Fraser and Flannels. And the Rugby League World Cup, which was to have been held in England this autumn, has been postponed until 2022. Australia and New Zealand had already pulled out because of pandemic concerns. It was a quieter day for Britain at the Olympics today, but Team GB still managed to pass 50 medals at these games. The latest successes included a first gold in the velodrome in what's been otherwise a largely disappointing games for British cyclists. From Tokyo, our sports editor, Steve Scott.
Gold on the track once again.
Usually it doesn't take Britain's track cyclists so long to strike gold, but they finally broke their Tokyo duck today thanks to Matt Walls in the Omnium. Leading going into the final of the event's 4 races, tactically Walls played it perfectly and won with plenty to spare.
It's pretty cool being the first one to get the gold, but yeah, it's been carnage basically this Olympics and team pursuit especially. But no, yeah, it's really cool to come away with the gold.
Jason Kenny became Britain's most decorated Olympian earlier this week with a team silver. Today he was on his own, but wasn't able to defend the sprint title he'd held since London 2012. A changing of the guard, maybe.
Britain in the white helmet, still
Katie Marchant was a big medal hope in the Kieran, but through no fault of her own, her challenge was cruelly ended when she was wiped out by Dutch rival Loreen van Riesen. Holly Bradshaw has a CV full of near misses. Could tonight at the Olympic Stadium be the night when she finally got onto the podium, outdoors on a world stage. In a nail-biting shootout, it came down to 3 medals between 4 vaulters. Bradshaw held her nerve for bronze. Britain's only other medal today was also bronze, and it came on the water. After the closest of finishes in the 200 metres kayak, Liam Heath squeezed onto the podium. With 3 days still to go, Team GB have matched the total number of medals they won in Beijing in 2008, and they've reached that milestone without much help from 2 of their biggest and best-funded sports, rowing and athletics. Evidence, perhaps, but new events and new faces have made their mark here. Steve Scott, ITV News, Tokyo.
And finally, as we've seen, the Olympics are often the pinnacle of a sporting career, but two somewhat non-sporty people in Oxfordshire are attempting a feat that is truly Olympian in scale. They are taking part in every Olympic sport across the full 17 days of the Games to raise money for motor neuron disease. Sangeeta Lal went to meet them.
There's something special and really British about the idea of normal people doing difficult things badly.
Determined to give their best performance, the trait of true champions. Stuart and Charlotte are attempting to complete a full Olympics in their own way, just perhaps without the same elegance as the Games.
That's the one thing we're lacking, talent and finesse. If we had that, we'd be the complete package.
Today was full of field and track events, ones that at times seemed almost impossible.
And if you're going to throw up, just chuck up over the fence, not on the track.
OK.
But for Stuart, quitting isn't an option, hosting his own Olympics to raise money for the charity that supported his brother Spencer, who they called Spenny. He died from motor neuron disease 10 years ago.
We need the money desperately, so any amount of pain that we're going through, it's inconsequential, it means nothing.
But the pain is beginning to show, helped though by messages of support from those who know exactly how this can feel.
What a legend. Good luck. If I can offer you any help and support in the Race Swap Challenges, then I'm here.
Wishing you both all the luck in the world as you complete the Spenny Olympics.
You've had some amazing messages from actual Olympians. How has that felt?
It's ridiculous. So they're in Tokyo now and they're all messaging us saying, how are you getting on? What are you up to today, guys? How did it go? Like, it's ridiculous. Like, you should be focusing on the real Olympics, never mind ours.
Real or not, this couple are pushing themselves to their limit, completing every sport, however long it takes. True Olympians in their own way. Sangeeta Lal, ITV News.
Oh, Team GV just moved up the medals table. That is it. Nina is here with news at 10 from me and all the team. Bye-bye.